Welcome, everybody. I am so excited today to have Belinda Waldock with me. She is the author of an upcoming book called Being Agile in Business, and she has done some amazing things taking these principles that we all know and love about Agile, whether you consider it a big A Agile or a small A Agile, and applying them to other parts of your business for great benefit. Welcome, Belinda.
Hello.
Hello. So, Belinda, tell us about yourself, and maybe why would you think that Agile could ever be, applied to something besides software development, engineering activities?
Okay. Well, I'm from sunny Cornwall over in the UK, and about 5 years ago, we introduced Agile to a group of software development companies down here to help them improve their quality and their code and their teamwork and all these different things. And my background is I've always worked with businesses either in the tech sector or customers who are looking to build websites or software solutions. So we ran that project and it was incredibly successful, and the companies were really happy. They were growing really well, and we had really happy customers. And on reflection, as we were kind of going along, and especially when we were getting feedback and surveying the clients, we kind of realized that actually it wasn't just Agile was great for software development, it could be applied in other areas. And we started testing that and trying that. And then over the last couple of years, we've run an actual kind of project to introduce Agile to over 100 companies. And that's been a great success as well. And that's kind of all snowballed, I guess. And then, which is where I've come to with the book, which is really about how we've kind of translated Agile for the rest of the world.
Okay. Can you tell me about one of the early tests? Like, what was it? You were working with these companies, you were putting in these principles which had been used in software and they were having good results. What was the first non-software process thing that you thought maybe this could be applied to, and what were the results of that?
I suppose first off, I started using it myself. So I started using it as just a kind of trainer, consultant, coaching, and helping to manage my own workload. And as well as working with technical companies, I work with very non-tech companies. So the person who springs to mind immediately, who I had very early discussions with, is a lady called Sophie, who was starting up. So she's just celebrating her 4-year anniversary, actually, which is fantastic. And she was starting up a hair accessory business, and she makes the most beautiful flamboyant hair accessories, and they're handmade and they're beautifully made. And she was making them really as a hobby at university, and her friends loved them, and it kind of caught on and started snowballing. And things were kind of getting quite out of control for her, and she was kind of juggling lots of different things. And I kind of said, oh, you should try this board. And so we set up a Kanban board for her and played with a load of post-it notes, got everything out of her head, structured it on a board. And she was just blown away by it. And she's still using it now, 4 years later, with her business. And yeah, so that's probably one of the loveliest stories. So it happened quite organically in a lot of ways, where I'd be going to see other types of businesses, and it would be kind of, well, we're doing this, why don't you try it? And really it evolved from there.
And so as she got all these things off of her out of her mind, right, or off of these different to-do lists and onto a board, what was it about the board, you think, that really changed her mindset?
I think it's because it was really visual. Because she's kind of quite a creative person, the visual nature and the colourful nature of it really appealed. It allowed her to kind of structure it and see it from a different perspective. So she could see that she was doing really great with getting, kind of celebrities to pick up and wear the items and things like that, but perhaps things like her finance, accounting on a monthly basis was slipping a little bit, so that wasn't getting done. So she could start to really see what was going on, and I think that was probably the most powerful thing.
So from there, it's clearly you had taken a concept from one discipline and applied it to another. Where did you go from there? What's the story arc look like that ends up in you writing a book and being a world famous author?
Well, so it kind of started with working with companies like Sophie at Crown and Glory and other companies. And from that, I really developed a series of workshops with the project that I was working on. So the project was funded to really kind of take this and translate it into something that was much more accessible to any business person. And so we ran workshops, and also I'm involved with the Agile on the Beach conference, which is a fantastic conference down here in Cornwall that we run every year. And we have loads of amazing experts come in for 2-3 days, and we kind of gather and talk about lots of things. So that was another really great opportunity for me to kind of put what I was doing out there, get feedback from the sector, which was always really, really positive and encouraging, and really helpful. So it really allowed me, we kind of took an agile approach, if you like. So we started kind of testing it with a few clients. They really loved it. They were people that I knew and I trusted, and that I knew that they would kind of go, yeah, we'll give it a go. And then it kind of grew from there, really. And now very much it's kind of, spreading agile even further. So it's really exciting how it's kind of grown quite organically and in that kind of agile sense. So
one of the things, so my audience is primarily agency owners, software development managers, things like that. So they might be sitting back here thinking about the parts of Agile they're most familiar with, whether it's things like stories, test-driven things, planning meetings. But my guess is when you're dealing with finance or sales or marketing or building your business, you're not working with those individual practices like that. I guess what I'm trying to understand is how can I apply even to my business as a solo person, these agile concepts in a way that maybe I'm just missing it now because I'm not thinking about it right. What's the first step I can take to start to see things I could do differently?
I think it's about taking that mindset, really. So the agile mindset of embracing change and testing things out and acknowledging that while you've got, a plan, it's actually just your best guess at a plan, and actually things are going to likely to change. So it's that kind of mindset, I think, is the real key behind it. To be able to really kind of then just use the tools, then really are just tools, because it's really about the approach that you take. So getting things out there early, doing things like your early release and your minimum viable product. And if you're a software team, people in sales and marketing will love that kind of thing. They'll love to have something to play with and that they can feed back on. So there's lots of ways you can kind of just spread agile. And that's kind of what's happened in a couple of companies down here, is agile's kind of gone viral in the business.
Really?
So yes, that's maybe where, we're kind of working with businesses that are kind of 20, 40, kind of 60 up to 100 people, and also quite small teams where, it's very visual. So actually they we make sure the boards go in a place where sales and marketing can see them as well as just the dev team, which makes a real difference.
Sure. So if you've got a team that has a sales and marketing group, as well as maybe a production group, whatever they're producing, physical goods or digital goods, does your book address how other departments beyond just the people delivering the goods use these agile mindset? Like, for example, I haven't run into too many marketing teams that felt good about putting a half-baked message out there. They were very particular, and they would sit in meetings for hours hashing out trying to guess the client's mind, if I could use that phrase. Yeah. Have you worked with marketing groups that actually have started to adopt this mindset?
Yeah, well, I have, and it's interesting in that we really kind of encourage people to do it with their kind of existing customers first, the ones that they've really kind of got that loyalty with and they've got that trust with, that are kind of willing, the innovators and the early adopters, so that they can test things out. And also we use, I kind of use different examples, so that you tend to get that resistance, and you say, well, actually, you're not going to give it to the world. You're just going to give it to a small set of users that you know you'll get feedback from. So, you know, it's allowing them and actually just getting them. It comes back to that mindset again, where they just have to acknowledge that they're not, you know, they can't read their customers' minds. And actually, if they could, there's the classic kind of Henry Ford. You know, if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So actually, you know, even the evidence and the statistics can be wrong, because especially when you're in tech, because it's so disruptive and it's so fast moving, that actually, you know, it's going to change, and you can't lock yourself away in a cupboard for 6 months and come up with a massive marketing campaign, because the world will have moved on. You have to be responsive.
Boy, there's so many groups that just think that's still true today. I talk to them where they think they can hunker down and create a product or a marketing campaign, or even the messaging on their website. And I think people are always surprised how long it takes, right? Like I talk to somebody in marketing and they say, oh, we'll have a new website done soon. And I say, well, how long is soon been? And they're like, well, we've been working on it for 5 months. And it's like, man, haven't things shifted oftentimes dramatically in that 5 months?
And that's why it takes so long, because as soon as they think they're ready for release, they go, oh God, something's changed, I've got to redo it. And it doesn't really kind of work that way. We had a great speaker at Agile on the Beach called Zavi, who took Agile to marketing. And he was working with a telephone company they unlock phones. So if you've got a mobile phone, you want it unlocked, you can get it done through them.
Sure.
And his story is great. You can see the video on the website in the archive, but the kind of short version is he basically sat down in front of the board and said, you know, actually, I don't know the best way to market the product. And the board were like, oh my God, who have we, you know, what have we done? And what they did was they used social media, and they basically put it out there and asked the question, you know, what would you like us to do? If we unlock your phone, what would you like us to do for you? And they got loads of suggestions back, and they kind of built on that and built up some conversation. And it kind of resulted, I think it was like a voting thing where people vote on their favorite choice. And actually what they voted for was a campaign called Unlock Your Phone, Unlock a Chicken.
What? Unlock a chicken?
Unlock your phone and unlock a chicken.
Okay,
over here we have kind of free range hens for our eggs, and we have farmed hens for our eggs. And this idea was actually that for every phone that got unlocked, they would release a battery hen to be a free range hen. And you know what, I mean, it's great that you go, what? Because, you know, how off the wall was that? And it was a great campaign, and it had loads of engagement. So it's a great example, I think, of where you can just kind of go out there and go, you know, and actually ask your customers, what would you like us to do?
And so they really found their customers' core value there around being humane, around this particular this thing that was completely unrelated to phones, right? And that became a point of resonance with their clients, and they had to start by asking them.
Yeah. Another great example actually is Sophie. She is on social media a lot, and somebody tweeted her and said, oh my God, I love your product so much. I wish I could just set up a direct debit and you send me something gorgeous every month. And Sophie, with the kind of minimum viable products, you know, kind of test ideas, kind of thinking on, she said, I can do that. So she just kind of set it up. She just went for it, and she went, yeah, we'll set up this direct debit for you, and we'll send you a box of goodies every month. And before she knew it, within a couple of months, she had over 100 subscribers to her Glitterati box.
Wow. And those subscription boxes are super popular right now.
Yeah. And it worked fun. And, and that's been, again, it's given her, from a business perspective, it's given her real kind of loyalty with her customers. She's got a really great group of customers that she can talk to now. They receive her goods. She can do things like she can test new products in those boxes and get great feedback. And she can also, because she's kind of started to scale the business now, then kind of waste starts to creep in. So she might be creating 100 of a product and she's got a bit left over. So she creates little bespoke, like really kind of unique things that can go into the boxes as well.
One of a kind things, right?
Yeah, so it kind of brings in things like lean as well in terms of helping to manage her waste. So she's just taken this kind of tiny little idea and run with it, and and really kind of just use the agile thinking to go, well, how can I use this to add value to my business?
So we've talked a little bit about this idea of the agile mindset, and I'm sure you dive into this in your book, but what are the key agile mindsets that one needs to have to start looking beyond just the software development? I mean, I think we're inferring things like testing, but can you kind of give us a rundown of those core mindsets that we need to start to cultivate?
Yeah, and it definitely is in the book. The key one that I always tend to talk about is embracing change, is seeing things when they're changing as a good thing. In the software sector, so with tech teams, quite often there's this kind of idea of scope creep.
Right.
It's quite a negative term. Do you guys have that term?
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, and we usually throw in some curse words along with scope creep.
Yeah. So, and what I always say to the development teams that I'm working with is, scope creep is a great thing because it means that your customer is growing. It means that they are, if they were just sat still, and nothing was changing, then you're going to supply them with a bit of software and kind of what's going to happen then. But actually their scope creep or your scope creep is their business growth.
That's a great point. I used to tell my developers that, it means we're going to make more money because we're going to build more of something. And usually it also means that I found that scope creep often occurred after the first or second demo to the client. And they would say, oh, now that I've seen this, what if we did X and Y and Z? The ideas they come up with are actually of a higher quality than the original ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And it allows, I think that's true of a lot of things in life, is once you've got something in your hands, you can then see it from a different perspective again. So again, using Post-it notes and things with clients is really powerful to help them to start seeing things from different perspectives. There's this kind of idea that actually, we do have to kind of manage scope creep, don't get me wrong, but it's that kind of just changing of mindset to kind of be more positive about change and be more kind of open to that. And the Agile approach allows that. That's what I love about Agile, is it allows you to kind of manage the change and control the change in a great way, whereas traditional management techniques just try and pin things down and they just don't allow for that flexibility. So as soon as something changes, the whole project management system falls apart. So this is I mean, Agile is not a silver bullet, but it'll help a lot.
Have you found departments within organizations or certain kinds of activities don't really lend themselves to this approach? I don't know, accounting or finance. I've never heard anybody talk about agile accounting, for example.
No, it's really kind of quite humbling, actually, that every business I work with finds some way of taking away a concept or a tool. And from kind of, I mean, I've had like a health and safety guy in a manufacturing company who has kind of really loved it, and through to people like film production companies that really love it. I think one of the things that I have seen within a business is how a business can use it for running the business, but also growing the business. And I think like one particular company that I work with, they very much look at it for the growth of the business side of things. So they've actually got, I mean, they've got a development team, but they've also got and there's kind of 3 teams within the business, and it started in their development team, and it kind of went viral around the company. But they've got their day-to-day stuff nailed. So they're kind of a development team, and they use the software that they develop as well. So their use is kind of pretty good, and that's just managed in kind of everyday systems. It's really that change project. So what we've aimed to do with them is, when we started, they were kind of starting lots of projects and not finishing them. And they were pretty much kind of, you know, like 99% running the business, 1% change and grow the business. So we've managed to get that to a kind of 80-20 split now. So it's 80% running the business, and that's done on the normal systems. And then the change projects are all up on the board. And that helps to make sure that that kind of 1 day a week, 20% of their time is spent on those change projects. And because they have such a positive impact on how efficient that they can be with the 80% of running, so it's kind of allowed that. So it's quite interesting how Agile has allowed that to happen.
So my guess is, when you work with an organization, and most of the folks I work with are owners of companies, not everybody in the organization is going to be excited about this. Is that true? Or is there just a universal rainbows and unicorns?
No, there's you can use the classic technology adoption life cycle. So when you go into a business, you'll have your innovators and your early adopters, your change agents, who will jump on it and love it. And then it can take a little bit of time to filter through. So and you do get the resistance. So I mean, the health and safety guy in the manufacturing company I mentioned, when I first ran the workshop with him, he was very kind of, I don't need this. I know what I'm doing. I know my job. Thank you very much.
Right.
Are you still there?
Sorry about that. I think we got disconnected for a second. I was just saying, I think a lot of times I found health and safety people are oftentimes conservative in their approach towards things. So this guy was saying, I don't need this. I know my business. I know what my customers need. And what changed, or how did he transition to be a fan?
Well, so I run my workshop in 2 parts. So we do the introduction, and then I revisit usually 4 to 6 weeks later to do a retrospective and to pick up on some of the stuff that's happened. And it was just kind of like a really amazing transition, in that I went in and he'd had the board up, and that was tracking his kind of health and safety projects. And he'd opened up a little bit and kind of said, you know, everybody sees me as the bad guy in the organization. You know, I'm the one coming along and making changes and making sure, you know, being pedantic. And he said, and actually putting the board up and making it visual, he said people started coming and looking at the board, and they started talking to me about things, and they started sharing their ideas. And I get it now. It's not about me.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty huge mindset shift.
Huge. It was kind of like, now I get it. It's about other people being able to see what I'm doing, being able to give me feedback. I'm getting feedback early with some of the ideas I've got on the board, which means that they're much more bought in, and I'm getting much better kind of reaction to when I'm implementing changes. And kind of really had a smile on his face. And yeah, and really kind of, I think, just changed the way that the organization saw him as well. So it's kind of magic sometimes when you see that happen. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time, but it's but like I say, every business seems to have adopted it in one way or another, short term or long term, and it's had a really positive benefit for them. Even if it's just getting that kind of, you know, here's a benchmark, here's a picture of where we are. That they can then take forward. And then to the other extreme, it really acting as kind of a real-time business model, business plan, business solution for them.
So your book is Being Agile in Business, coming out very soon. It's out on the Amazon Kindle store in the UK today, right?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And coming out in print very soon, right?
Yeah, it's so it's just come out in print in the UK. I've literally had tweets today saying, I've got my copy. So I've kind of got photos like this of people with the book, which is fantastic. And then it's now live on Kindle for the US, so Amazon.com.
Oh, wonderful.
And I believe that hopefully that paperbacks will be making their way across the pond very soon. So
what
yeah,
can,
really,
what can
really
people
exciting.
Expect to learn from the book? We've talked at a high level. We've had some great success stories. Clearly, your workshop is where you're delivering most of this content today, or working with individual companies. But if somebody's thinking about doing this, what will the book teach them?
Okay, so there's kind of 4 sections to the book. The first section is all about the kind of why Agile, really. So it's kind of it's the background and the benefits and what makes a person kind of an Agile person, what is Agile. Then the second section is all about kind of the Agile mindset. So it's called Agile Thinking. And that's really kind of helping to get people to kind of think about what they're hoping to aim and achieve from being Agile, and some of the kind of thinking and structures that you can use to do that. And I'm a qualified coach as well, in that kind of pure coaching kind of sense, in that, you know, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to help you work it out for yourself.
Right.
So the book is very kind of written in a coaching way as well. So I hope that it's something that people can pick up and really, you know, take bits and apply them, and test them and play with them and adapt and evolve them. The third section is the Agile Approach. So that's where we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of Kanban boards and running sprints and how to structure retrospectives and some of the tools that we use in Agile, and examples, and how, and very much translated, so not in geek speak, if you like, what we call
Good.
So it's kind of hopefully written, well, it is written in that way that anybody can read it. And the fourth section is called Agile Culture, and that's really about how you can share Agile. So that's about how, once you've kind of adopted it for yourself, that you can share Agile and you can build a culture within the business. So it talks about some of the benefits and some of the things that you'll find out by using Agile, some of the resistances that you might come across, and some of the kind of more the kind of organizational tools that you can use, as well as teams. So using it as a team as well as an individual. So it's kind of like an introduction to Agile, very much in a book. It's an easy read. A lot of the software companies that I'm working with have said it's a great book to give to new people that are new to Agile, to help them to understand it. But also to give to their customers. They're all quite keen to give it to their customers and say, read this book. This will explain what Agile is. And hopefully then they will, you know, really start to embrace that kind of change and accepting change, and give an insight into how they can use Agile at their end of the process.
That's brilliant. I know when I had a consultancy, we would tell our customers, like, we are Agile and that's going to be good for you. But they weren't software people, and they would just nod and say, oh, that's great. You're going to be this thing called Agile. And sure, who wouldn't want to be Agile, right? And then we would say, well, and there's responsibilities for you and for me. And, okay, that's all fine and dandy at the beginning, but they very rarely got it. It took a long time to educate them. So I feel like what people should do is buy a box of these books and hand one of them to every new client, because having a client that sort of gets it is absolutely worth its weight in gold. It's worth 10 times the price of the book, because you can refer back to that book and be saying, you remember when we talked about learning and experimentation. Do you remember where we talked about visibility and things like that and transparency? Well, that's what we're doing here. So it might seem foreign to you because you're not a software developer, but the book carries with it these principles that are going to kind of connect the dots for your clients.
Yeah, definitely. That's and I think that's what I guess I've done as a person traditionally. So I've sat between customers and software companies and helped to, really kind of act as a translator and interpreter a lot of the time.
Right.
So that's what I kind of aim for the book to be, is really, a kind of virtual version, if you like, of me kind of coming in and going, okay, this is what they say. This is what that actually kind of, here's it in your language.
Got it. Yeah. Now, there's been a lot of, how does this book differ from the lean business books that have come out in the last 5 years, Lean Startup or Running Lean, or things that really say when you're very small and getting started, you should be lean. And that means we're going to create hypotheses and test them. Is there any connection between this book and that approach?
There is, absolutely. And I'm a massive fan of Eric Ries's Lean Startup. It's a fantastic book. And Ash as well with Running Lean. I did a workshop with him actually, and we got really chatting about kind of their adoption of Lean and the kind of Agile adoption, which are very kind of close in kin. To me, Lean does kind of come under the Agile umbrella, and Agile comes under the Lean umbrella, if you like. So
okay.
I think there's definite synergy there. And there's a few mentions in the book of things, so kind of drawing on some of Eric's thinking, and there's so it's really nice. I think the difference, I guess, is that Eric and Ash's books are still quite technical books. So a lot of the examples are kind of software-based examples, which I found that my clients have, my non-software clients have struggled with. They don't really get the examples. So what I hope is it's kind of more of a book where, it's more about the individual. So it's more about any individual that wants to kind of think about Agile and adopting that and using that within their business, whether they're the business owner and whether they're just starting out like Sophie, or whether they're actually part of quite a large established team like the chap from the health and safety in the manufacturing company. So it's nice that it's kind of perhaps a little bit broader than focused on kind of startup and tech startup particularly.
Now that makes a lot of sense. I know that if I'm reading a book and the examples don't resonate with me, I'm very likely to put it down just from a feeling of this wasn't for me, or I'm afraid I'm not going to get it. Okay, I have a very particular question for you. We had someone who reached out to me, wrote an email about who I hope they're listening today, and they asked this. First, they had a concern. They said, well, this feels just like Agile whitewashing for marketing. And they were pretty honest. That's not a very nice thing to say, right? Like, this book is just bringing this big Agile process. And they said, what I really need is to have better working relationships and transparency with marketing and sales. I'm an engineering manager over here. What I crave is to know what customers need. What I crave is to know what kind of requests is marketing hearing for features, so I can make sure we're building the right thing, not just building the thing right, if I can use that phrase.
Yeah.
So is this the kind of book that this person could purchase a couple of copies and start to leave them or give them to people in their organization? And I mean, is that an approach you would recommend, or what would you say to this person if they were here with us?
I think, leaving the copies of the book. I mean, the thing that I always encourage people is I say don't kind of try and force it down anybody's throat. Just put it out there. You say invite them to come and look at your board. Invite them into your circle, if you like. Don't make them feel like they're this outside person. So that kind of inclusivity, I think, is really, really, really important. And in terms of kind of, agiling someone, if you like, it is a journey for them. I love things like innovation games. So I use innovation games, and I use other collaboration games that have kind of evolved again, through my work. And to sit down, and use those to really feed the process. So, the games are a great way to kind of, again, visualize things and get those conversations started, and make sure that people are, they've got that consensus between them, so they understand where each is coming from.
Sure.
Because misunderstanding is so easy to do. We kind of make assumptions, or we think a certain thing, and actually having that kind of sanity check where you're working with I'm amazed when I work with a lot of kind of web development and software development companies, and a good few of those that I've worked with, they kind of say, our customers are an absolute nightmare, they're just sending me emails all the time, they're doing this, they're changing their mind, they're completely out of control, what do I do with them? And
yes, I hear that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I say, okay, so how often do you meet your client? How long are your engagements? Oh, well, we'll probably be working with them between 3 and 6 months. And how often do you meet with them? And there's that kind of blank silence, as and when necessary.
Right, as little as possible, because didn't I mention they're difficult, right?
Yeah, as and when, I really have to. And that's what causes the problem, because the customer doesn't know when he's going to get to speak to you, or she's going to get to speak to you. So by building in things like sprints, that as a customer, I now know that every 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to get to sit down with you and look at stuff and review stuff, or talk on the phone, or whatever it might be. So naturally, now I know I'm going to see you every 2 or 3 weeks. I'll just say things up, because it's easier than pinging them to you all the time. So there's these kind of just little kind of simple things that I think we lose sight of, because we're in this kind of such this mechanical world nowadays, and this world of convenience, and this world of just everything being set and done, and it's just not true. It's just kind of
it's not.
You're chasing the end of the rainbow type thing, and you just have to. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sort of I equate it, for some reason. I think there's a part of my brain that is stuck in my about 12 to 14 years old, as I started to relate to girls very poorly. And I cannot imagine the idea of wanting to have a relationship with a young woman when I was in high school, that I said, I will speak to them as little as possible and only when necessary. Although that may have been my problem, was I suffered from a fear of speaking to them. So that's probably exactly how I acted. I definitely talk to agency owners who think, well, I'll call if anything's bad or if the payment's late. But other than that, they should assume everything's fine. That's a pretty crummy relationship.
And I think fear, you capture something there, and this kind of, we won't do anything unless something's going wrong, because one of the lovely things about Agile is it does seem to broach that divide between kind of technical and creative, if you like. And I'm, when I kind of think about myself and my personality, I kind of do have this kind of technical side to me, which comes from my computer science degree and things like that. But I also have kind of creative side as well. And those things, to mesh them, can be quite difficult sometimes. So I do find that Agile seems to be a tool which both sides like, and so it allows to have that communication channel, and it just opens up and breaks those barriers down, which stops it being quite so scary and gives it a bit of structure and control, which my logical techie side loves.
Well, I want to go back to what you said to the person who I said, I hope they're listening to this, the guy who worked, who was a department manager or a team lead, and said, I wish marketing would act differently. Yeah. I think I just want to make sure I understood what you said. And that's this idea of invite them into your world. create information radiators, boards, transparent, ways to be transparent, invite them into your world to have the initial conversations, even though your secret agenda is to understand their world better. And as you do that, and you start to explain, possibly with the use of your book, that these tools are not just limited to the technology or the engineering pieces, they can then possibly suggest that similar things would allow other people to be invited into their world. And wouldn't it be great if we could collaborate more? Is that the approach you're really advocating for?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of putting it out there, and also the whole kind of lean startup idea of get out of the office, I think, is great as well.
Right.
So, getting out there and kind of understanding them better and showing an interest and listening. So I talk about the kind of 3 stages of learning what you need to learn, and then doing a period of activity and acting on things, and then this kind of reflection. And every now and then I find myself switching and not saying learning but saying listening. So this kind of idea of listen, then act, then reflect, then listen some more and act and reflect, so because that learning and listening combined,
very tightly coupled. I know. When I worked at an enterprise, the idea of putting up a big board and inviting other departments to come in and look at it, I'll be honest, kind of makes my stomach hurt a little bit. It's putting myself out there. What if they think I'm stupid? What if they criticize me? What if they ask me questions I don't know, or they start to see all the warts on the process? But as I'm now not in that organization, but outside of it, I can't imagine anything that would have been more powerful for creating the relationships with people in other departments than for me to start to be transparent, to give them, I guess, to make them comfortable starting to do the same thing. And it's not going to be for everybody, but my guess is when you are listening to what they say, other people will start to listen to what you need as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You start to build that rapport and that relationship. It's that collaboration over contract negotiation. It's the Agile Manifesto, it rings true. One of the tools that I've found particularly powerful in kind of linking, and I call them building bridges between the silos. Roadmaps. So rather than, I wouldn't suggest that you introduce, if you're a development team, I probably wouldn't suggest you introduce the marketing people to your dev board because your development board is going to be like a foreign language. It's going to be like looking at Chinese for them if they're
that's a good point. Yeah.
So it's just not gonna make sense to them in that level. But what you can do is you can kind of bring it up a level. So you can, with a roadmap, you'd have your time line running across your top, and you might have that monthly or quarterly. And then down the side, you'd have each of your silos, if you like. So you'd have product development, you'd have marketing, you'd have sales, you'd have key events, key trends that are happening, maybe an infrastructure and resources row as well. And really that depends on the business as to what those rows are. And as a great kind of collaboration game is actually to populate that board. And that's really powerful because then you're doing it at a high level. So say you're bringing out a new release of your product and that's coming out in January, then the marketing team can then go, yeah, we're going to be doing the marketing for that in December through to February. And then the sales team are going to be saying, well, we're going to start selling it in January because that's when it's released. So the development team start to become aware of what the marketing team and what the sales team and how you're all dependent on each other and reliant on each other. And actually by doing that, you can start to kind of go, well, yeah. So when the marketing team kind of go, oh, wow, we've been talking to clients and we need this new feature, they'll, excuse the aeroplane, they'll be, bear with me. There's like people flying in for their holidays now, you see, it's coming to and Cornwall is a massive holiday destination. So
I wish I was there.
But yeah, it allows them to start to see those dependencies. So if they come in with this exciting new feature, they're kind of aware that actually the development team are pretty much stacked out. So they're going to start to become aware, well, if we want that new feature, actually, maybe if we did that in February, we could then run additional marketing in the March, and it won't be as disruptive to the sales team because they've done all their sales pitching, you know, or actually if that change does need to happen, that actually you can go, okay, well, what aren't we going to develop in order to develop this new feature? Because we can't do it all unless we get more resource in, and we all know adding people to software projects isn't necessarily the best thing you can do.
Right. So, right. Now, I've sat in road mapping meetings as department managers, led them as a sort of a representation of the software department, but it's always been key managers sitting around in management outfits, making management decisions. There was never the word agile. Who needs to be in an agile organization? Who needs to be a part of this meetings? Does agile change who participates?
I think it's good to have, I mean, it depends on the size of the teams, obviously, working on projects. Sometimes you can't have everybody. If you're a small business, though, I think you can. I think you can, I mean, I've run road mapping workshops with kind of 15, 20 people. And, you know, we literally just kind of draw it up on the wall, and everybody kind of gets a pack of Post-it notes, and it's kind of, okay, you put up there what you're doing. And so it becomes much more of a kind of team building event almost, and that kind of collaborative game, rather than the kind of sitting around the desk discussing. So I think it's very dependent on the project.
Okay. Yeah, I know that in our organization, a developer would not necessarily know the name of anyone in marketing. Other than maybe the VP, who they would never dare to talk to, frankly, right? And so if we can connect the people below, so the developer or the team leader, whoever, can feel comfortable calling that person or walking into their office, I think that's where we start to really have valuable collaboration.
Yeah, it's making sure, and we talk a little bit around like virtual teams. So if you've got, like, you're developing a new feature or you're developing a new product or whatever it might be, service or whatever, then, you know, Agile seems to, it does seem to break down silos as well. So rather than having a development team, a marketing team, and a sales team, you'll tend to have a virtual team that has got somebody from development, maybe a couple of people from marketing, somebody from sales, and, you know, somebody else as well, that come together to work on a specific element. So I think that's really powerful as well in how it can start to create cross teams, as well as kind of those kind of individuals. So that helps to kind of then create relationships and start to break down those barriers that kind of naturally form, really. Nobody really ever sets out to build a bridge or build a wall between two departments. We're just, you know, people have to be inward facing in order to get their job done. And so Agile then gives them that tool to be a little bit more outward, broadcasting and communicating and getting feedback as well.
Wow. And just to take that metaphor and move it over to the client services industry, if we can break down those barriers with our clients, how much more effective are we going to be? How much more often will we take a 3 to 6 month engagement and turn that into 3 to 6 year engagement, because we have trust and we have relationship, and they wouldn't think about going to anyone else because we're not even competing on price. We are their trusted partner and advisor.
Yeah. I think it's easy to win one bit of business and then not get anywhere with it. It's hard, you know, it's hard to build a relationship and to build a rapport and to build that kind of trust. That means that, you know, when I know years ago, I kind of, when I was kind of coming out of uni, I worked for a company who were a web developer and they sold hardware as well. And, you know, I kind of just got, you know, really kind of disappointed, because when you went to sell a computer, they'd just sell the computer and wouldn't sell any software with it, because that's kind of what the trend was. So you bought this computer and it was 500 quid, and then you kind of, it was almost like they were laughing as they went out because they knew they'd be back in a week's time for the operating system and the Microsoft Word and things like that. So to sell the truth to somebody is a lot harder.
Right.
You know, so you kind of, Agile is a nice way that I found that you can kind of sell the truth and then kind of go, okay, and we'll start with this little bit so that, you know, you're not overwhelmed by that truth.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So it's yeah, I think it's a nice way to work. It's a great way to work.
Belinda, thank you so much. So the book is Being Agile in Business. It comes out on the Amazon. Let's see, it's out today for the Kindle store in the US, and I think in the UK as well. And when does the book actually hit the shelves? It sounds like it's out now.
It's yeah, so it's available on Amazon, which of course are the big boys in the book world these days. But also, really excited that if anybody there is flying into the UK in July, we have a big kind of book stationery store over here called WH Smith. And they have bookstores in all the major airports and railway stations. So the book's going to be stocked there for July as the business book of the month. So that's fabulous news.
I'm so excited. I'm flying into London July 11th. I am going to make a beeline to the nearest bookstore and get my copy.
So it should be in Heathrow, Gatwick, London Paddington train station. So it's really exciting. And if you do, you have to take a photo and tweet it. So and if you can't find it, you must ask.
I will take a selfie with it, and me and Big Ben in the book, something like that, and I'll tweet it. Absolutely. Yeah. And where can people find you online, Belinda?
Excellent. How can they find me? I've got a website, beingagile.co.uk. I'm on Twitter. So that's just at Belinda Waldock or at beingagile, which is a bit easier to spell. And I'm on Facebook as well. So I've got a / Being Agile page, and LinkedIn as well. So I'm easily Googled as well, because Belinda Waldock is quite a unique name. So if you Google me, you tend to get a lot. So, but yeah, I'm really happy to hear from anyone. I'd love feedback. I'm really, really keen to hear any feedback that people have on the book. And also, I always love photos of boards. So I actually, the PR company that I'm working with through Pearson, through the publisher, I got an email yesterday and he said, oh, this is all going brilliant, and you should know our office mirror is now covered in Post-its. He's that's, you know, and I love that. Just makes my day when I hear things like that and get photos that show you know, what people have done with their boards. I've had people create actual clouds, so white fluffy clouds with little hooks to hang ideas on.
Oh wow.
I've had we've got one client who's got they manufacture toys, and they've got a massive picture of a ship on their wall, like a container ship, and then they have product icons that, so when a product gets shipped, it goes onto the ship.
Onto the ship.
So,
there you go. So buy the book, take a picture, send Belinda your feedback, show her your selfie with the book, or your wall of your Kanban wall. Belinda, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much, Marcus. It's been a real pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.